In Chapter 30 of the Yoga Vasistha, today we will discuss the topics related to Atma Dev as the only doer and enjoyer, the causeless creation, the metaphor of spring season, Chitilata, the decline of consciousness, etc. Welcome, O Rama, my dear disciple, to this explainer of the supreme wisdom. Today I'm going to guide you through the very deepest layers of existence. We're going to pull back the heavy veil of Maya so you can finally behold the ultimate truth. So open your mind and let's dive right in.
Here's our roadmap for today's discourse. First, the only doer and enjoyer. Second, the causeless creation of spring. Third, the vine of consciousness. Fourth, the decline of consciousness. Fifth, the path to ultimate freedom. And finally, a quick summary of Canto 30. Let these 6 steps serve as the syllabus for your complete liberation.
Let's start with Part 1. The only doer and enjoyer. The glory of Atmadev. You know, the world constantly tells you that you're the one performing actions, that you're carrying all these heavy burdens and suffering the consequences. But the truth of the self? It's quite different. As we see in verses 19 through 22 from the first half of the Nirvana Prakarana, the scripture boldly declares, the self-God, Atmadev, alone is the doer and the enjoyer. I want you to read this literally, Rama. There's no hidden, convoluted meaning here. The true essence within you is quite literally the sole entity experiencing this vast cosmic play.
So let's look at how we define Atmadev. It is the pure self-God. It's not your mind, it's not your body, and it's certainly not your ahankara, your false ego. It's the silent witness. It enjoys the entire panorama of existence without ever getting tangled up in it. It remains eternally pure, completely untouched by the illusions of this material world.
Behold the core conflict within all of us. On one side, you have the ego. This is the false doer. It claims ownership, it stresses out, it suffers, and it traps you in this massive illusion of control. On the other side, you have Atmadev, the true enjoyer, eternally unbound. Rama, your practical task in this life is actually quite simple. Detach from that false ego. Stop claiming, I did this, or I achieved that. Just surrender all action to the silent witness within you.
Now for Part 2, causeless creation, the metaphor of the spring season.
If the ego isn't doing the creating, how does the universe even exist, right? Well, verse 32 offers us this absolutely stunning visualization. It says, just as the spring season brings forth flowers and leaves naturally, so does creation arise. Think about the literal translation for a second. Does the spring season sweat, labor, or stress out trying to make a flower bloom? No, of course not. The blossoming is just an effortless byproduct of its very presence. And that's the crucial point here. The universe blossoms spontaneously from supreme consciousness. There's no labored task, no underlying motive, and no external cause in the way we mortals usually think of cause and effect. Just as spring simply is, and the leaves naturally appear, Atmadev simply is, and the universe naturally manifests. It doesn't try to create the world, Rama. It's just a natural, completely effortless expression.
Moving on to Part 3, the vine of consciousness, understanding Chitilata. So, how does this pure, effortless consciousness actually interact with the material world? Well, before we can understand the vine, we have to understand its seeds. Here are the various names of consciousness. Chitti, which is pure awareness. Jiva, the individual soul. The mind, Maya, or illusion, and the ego. Now, Rama, I really want you to realize that these aren't entirely separate entities fighting against each other. Not at all. They're simply different expressions, different densities, really, of the exact same underlying reality. They just take on different names based on their function in this grand illusion.
As verses 46 through 51 tell us, consciousness extends itself outward into illusion, growing like a creeping vine. This is the great, vivid metaphor of Chitilata. Pure awareness doesn't just sit perfectly still. Out here in the manifest world, it reaches, it grasps, it branches out. The mechanics of this are crystal clear. Chitilata sprouts from pure consciousness and branches right into your intellect, your mind, and your senses. Suddenly, you're tasting, touching, thinking, judging, and before you even know what happened, the soul is tangled up in this incredibly dense forest of worldly duality. I want you to observe this in your own life, Rama. Watch how a simple thought branches into a desire, which turns into an action, and then into a heavy attachment. That's literally the vine growing in real time.
Which brings us to Part 4, the decline of consciousness, the fall into worldly illusion.
So what actually happens when this vine completely overgrows and chokes out the light? We witness this tragic step-by-step degradation. We start at step 1, pure self-awareness, completely free and unbound. Then step 2, we identify with the ego, thinking I am this physical body. Step 3, because we think we're the body, we develop deep attachments to worldly desires just to satisfy it. And finally, step 4, total bondage. We completely forget who we truly are and become entirely enslaved by the illusion. Consider just how tragic this contrast is. You're surrendering your literal birthright, the pure self-God, blissful and unbound, just to become trapped by the vine of the mind, bound by suffering and endless desire in a fallen state. It's a profound philosophical tragedy. It's a spiritual forgetfulness, where it's like a king who completely forgets his kingdom and ends up begging for pennies on the street. But do not despair, O Rama. Let's look at part 5, the path to ultimate freedom, reversing the degradation.
A master doesn't show you the trap without also handing you the key. The timeline to liberation is just the exact reversal of the fall. First, you have to practice detachment. Simply stop watering that vine of desires. Second, realize you are the non-doer. Remember that beautiful metaphor of the spring season? You are that. Third, as you stop claiming actions, the ego naturally dissolves on its own. And finally, you arrive at ultimate salvation, nirvana, resting once again in pure awareness.
Therefore, here is your crucial, practical task. Cease the ego's endless desires. Withdraw your senses from the tangled forest of the world. Recognize that the mind is merely an illusion, a creeping vine. Cut it right at the root with the sword of true knowledge, and rest once again in the pure, radiant awareness of the self. This is the practical path to your total liberation.
Finally, part 6. A quick summary of Canto 30, the essence of the Nirvana Prakarana. Let's quickly recap these core teachings to make sure they are forever etched into your understanding. 1. Atma Dev, the pure self, is the absolute doer and enjoyer. The ego is just a phantom. 2. Creation has no labored cause. It blooms naturally from consciousness, just as spring effortlessly brings forth flowers. 3. The mind extends outward just like the Chiti Lata vine, tangling you up in duality. 4. Forgetting your true nature leads to a tragic step-by-step decline into worldly bondage. And 5. Reversing all of this through self-knowledge and detachment guarantees your ultimate salvation. I'll leave you with this final, provocative thought, Rama. If you are not the true doer, if you are merely the silent, eternal witness to the spontaneous spring of creation, what worldly burdens are you still choosing to carry? Why hold on to the heavy, exhausting stones of ego and anxiety when the universe literally blossoms without a single ounce of your effort? Reflect on this deeply, let go of the vine, and awaken to your true, unbound self.